Hey there and welcome back to Remnant. Today we are playing the Blazing Gunslinger, which is a corny name, I know, but it explains the build perfectly, right? It's fire damage. It's a gunslinger. There it is, sums it up, right? So we're doing the focus on fire damage, and I'm going to be utilizing some of the fire rate stuff with the gunslinger, specifically bullet storm, as well as Challenger as my secondary archetype, and the Rampage skill, because that's just really how I wanted to play this whole setup. On the whole, pretty fun. Really enjoying it so far, actually. Now, like any of my builds, this is not all 100% super optimized, like the best thing ever, right? I'm doing this a lot for fun, just kind of sticking to a lot of themes and stuff too. So there's always room for improvement. You can always tweak things to make them a little bit better, and I'll try and touch on those as I go through the items. But always feel free to make it your own, given the nature of Remnant. You might have some of the items, you might not. So use what you got, right? Now we are going to be playing on Apocalypse, so you get to see how the build does there, and it's just going to do better on your lower difficulties because they are lower difficulties. Now, starting from the top, my primary archetype is going to be the Gunslinger. It's just what I really felt like using, and I wanted it as my primary for the loaded prime perk. When we activate our skill, instantly reloads our weapons, and then we get infinite ammo for 8 seconds. Now, the bad thing with it, my understanding is it is currently bugged right now, so that when you activate it, you instantly reload your gun, and you should have infinite ammo, so you're going to be immediately restocking that weapon or reloading it from an infinite reserve. However, the way it is working right now, it's actually reloading from what you actually have. So for example, if I'm reloading my Sparkfire shotgun, it's going to take 7 bullets from my actual reserves to reload it, and then I have infinite ammo. So if you're using something with a really big magazine and you don't have the full amount of ammo back, you're not going to be able to fully reload it on skill activation. It's a bug that I believe they're trying to look into right now. So that is something to kind of keep in mind. But hey, maybe by the time you start messing around with this, that will have been fixed. But overall, I just kind of enjoy the Gunslinger, and I'm using the Bullet Storm, which our gun is not really super high rate of fire, but it does increase our fire rate and reload speed, and it's going to make it a fully automatic instead of that semi-automatic with those instant reloads whenever we actually take down an enemy, right? I end up choosing Challenger as my secondary for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to use Rampage. Again, fire rate, reload speed, chance for infinite ammo, etc., right? And increasing our range damage. But the other thing is, I'd been closing the gap a bit between me and enemies, and then enemies have just been also closing the gap between us as well. So we get more damage as we get closer to those enemies and increase our critical chance. And that damage is a flat damage increase. It's not just range damage. It's not just melee damage. So, it helps us out with all of our damage. And I kind of like some of the other perks that come along with the Challenger as well. It's just kind of one of my favorite archetypes. However, Hunter would be a pretty solid choice as well, wherever it's at, because a lot of what we're doing is range damage. So depending on how you're really feeling about it, you could go with that. The bad thing is it's not going to increase your status damage or your elemental damage, because our gun is doing range damage, but it's also elemental damage. So if you've got something that is increasing elemental damage, it'll increase it. If you've got something doing range damage, it's going to increase it, right? So this will increase our firearm damage. We're just not going to see the bonus to our damage over time effect or a melee weapon. Now, I should say that a choice you could do for your primary archetype would be the Ritualist, because we do have a lot of burning effects going on. I do really enjoy doing a nice burn build, but I just didn't feel like using it. It is a solid choice. It's going to get you that increased status effect damage, get you the crit chance and stuff on guys with negative status effects. It can spread with the Vile Prime perk. So, it's just a solid choice, obviously. Ritualist is very strong, but we're not using that. Let's go to the main stars of the show, which are our weapons. It's a fire build. We got to use our fire weapons, which of course are the Sparkfire shotgun, Smolder, and Hellfire. They all do innate fire damage, so everything that we're kind of doing is going to enhance them. Sparkfire shotgun, it's a shotgun, hits them for fire damage, catches them on fire for 3 seconds. Now, inside of our gun, we have 2 things. We've got Heatwave as our mod, and we've got Searing Wounds as our mutator. Heatwave is pretty cool. It's a big aura that is going to catch people on fire after they've been within that aura for 3 seconds. Sometimes it feels a lot longer than 3 seconds, but, that is what it is. Thing's pretty solid. It's really grown on me. At first, when I first tried it, I was kind of meh. But I tell you, it's caught some enemies that have been trying to kind of sneak up on me and I don't know are immediately behind me. And then it just burns them down, because this thing does a lot of fire damage with what we've got going on. So On the whole, I've really enjoyed it, and it lasts for 30 seconds, which is a long time. So I really want to do a Lemire like sensor build with it that does like really cranks up the duration and just have a lot of fun there. Searing Wounds. It's a new mutator that has also come with a DLC, increasing our range damage of the weapon by 10% to burning enemies, much like how Twisting Wounds is, where it's based on bleeding enemies. But then when you get it to level 10, it's going to inflict burning on enemies when you get a critical hit or a weak spot hit. So we have it at level 10, so naturally we're going to get that. Melee weapon is Smolder, does fire damage. When you do the charge attack, it's going to catch them on fire. The damage was increased with the DLC big patch. And then for our mutator, it's Stormbringer, increasing that status effect damage. And at level 10, it's going to reduce our enemies' resistances by 10%. This thing does a lot of damage over time as well. It's pretty brutal when you hit them with that. And then, of course, we have Hellfire, which, again, I think this one also got a change. Don't really remember what it is. They're all small tweaks across the board. Very solid. It's grown on me a lot since I've been using it. It's a flamethrower. And when enemies get close, I'm really going to be using it. It's going to do constant fire damage, catch them on fire. Explosive Shot is pretty solid, actually. I like to open with Explosive Shot, and then I move in with the flamethrower. And the Maelstrom mutator increases its elemental damage by 10% for each unique elemental status effect on the target. We're not always going to be getting like a big bonus out of there. And honestly, I don't know if it means like unique elemental status effect, meaning like it needs to be fire, acid, and then lightning and bleed, or not even lightning, just elementals. So like you got to have the actual different elemental effects for the bonus damage, or if by having 2 unique stacks of burning, that will increase its damage by 20%. I don't 100% know. I'm going to be honest. I don't 100% care. But it does give us a damage increase, at least of a 10%, right? And then increase in mod power generation by elemental damage and elemental status damage. So this thing is going to charge up its explosive shots fairly well. I have been enjoying using that combo. Rings and Amulet. This is kind of where we really get some of our big effects going, right? Talisman of the Sun. Increase fire damage, increase burning damage. Solid. It's a huge bonus. 20% more to our fire damage, 50% more to our burning damage. It's a winner. That's what we want to do. The Firestone increases our fire damage by 12% and then gives us 15 more fire resistance. Good choice as well. It's obviously only focused on fire, so if you are mixing in other elementals, you're going to be better off using something like the Alumni Ring. Now, you could obviously make the argument where maybe you just go Burden of the Destroyer, and that thing is just going to increase all of your damage by 15%, but then you got to deal with the downside of it, which is a decrease in firearm range, right? So, depends on what you're feeling, depends on what you have going on, right? But I like this one because, again, we're doing like all fire damage. Everything we're doing is fire. Now, the Red Ring of Death is just a solid choice for our negative status effects. It just duplicates it. Duplicates our outgoing one, but then it reduces all our status damage by 10%. Honestly, not a big deal. Like, the having 2 is just a huge boon. It's a huge bonus, right? So, very solid. Hardly notice a difference in the my damage over time effect. So, definitely want to hear, depending on what you want to do, like maybe you would rather go with, you could try Band of the Fanatic. Band of the Fanatic is really weird. Sometimes I feel like it does good. Sometimes it just does not seem to do jack, and it makes your stuff last very short. Again, if you don't have something like that, you could just lean into like what I was talking about here, was going in with the Alumni Ring, Burden of the Destroyer, or just some other ranged type of thing, since a lot of what our damage source is kind of coming from range with those damage over time effects on top. Singed Ring also got changed. I believe it got changed from multiplicative damage to additive, so it is a bit not as good. However, I mean, it's still damage increase, right? So burning enemies, all our enemies are going to be burning, increase it by 12%. So there you go. It's straightforward, right? Our last ring is kind of a flex slot. This one I've been swapping around quite a bit. I've got the targeting jewel in there currently, increasing our range by 4 meters and reducing spread. This is nice because we're using a shotgun, so we have a fair amount of spread reduction effects going on. This will kind of just make it a little bit tighter, a little bit better, makes it easier to hit weak spots, so we can get the 3 stacks of bleeding or 3 stacks of burning right away. I like it, but like I said, if you're just looking for more damage, put another damage ring in there. Maybe you need something that's a little more defensive for you. Do some defensive to kind of cover you, whether it's like something that gives you regen or damage reduction as you get lower, like say the hardened coil, something like that. I was using it was a new ring. What was it called? I was using the Bloodless King's Vow, gaining 4% of our base range damage dealt as life steal. That one was being kind of fun. It was just another way for me to get health back by dealing damage. So depending on what you're really feeling, I've been swapping it around a lot, so it's not a make or break deal depending on what you want to do. My relic is a resonating heart. Ideally, what I do is at the start of a fight, I activate this so that we can start getting a big heal to last us for 20 seconds, so over the entire course of the fight. And in addition to that, because we activate it at the start of like a fight, I should get a damage bonus from the gunslinger. If enemies are close, I get stacks of bulwark and, you know, some defense and whatnot, which also increases our damage by another 10% as well. So in theory, I'm using this at the start of a fight, getting 20% more damage and stacks of bulwark for defense. Now, the mods I have in there are increased health, increased elemental damage, and reduced weapon spread. I think, depending on how you want to arrange your weapon spread stuff, you could swap that out for range damage increase, and then like your gun is dealing more damage as well. But again, it kind of depends on how you're feeling and what you've got going on. Armor-wise, it's the High Noon Hat, High Noon Duds, and then the Knotted Greaves and the Knotted Armor. I just like how it kind of looks, and since I've got like these two kind of rootish weapons and Remnant from the Ashes, the root had a really big fire emphasis. I really like the idea of running that. Not very solid for our whole setup. We're at 45 weight, which is, we can go way higher. We have Challenger, we've got full stacks of Strongback. We could wear a lot heavier armor because we have 44% damage reduction. Not a huge amount for Apocalypse. We're not quite getting one shot, but we take a lot of damage. So if you want to do this and you're taking a lot of hits, swap out this stuff for some like a full set of heavier armor, whether it's just going to be an actual complete set of the heavy armor or like Lido Mark II or something, and then you can still get like a heavy roll or a medium roll. Trait wise, so I've got standard Apocalypse things where maxed out Fortify, maxed out Vigor. And then I've gone a little weird from there. I've got my standard kind of quality of life, 4 points in endurance, putting it at 5, and 5 points in recovery. And then, like I said, getting strange. I max out swiftness. Closing the gap is what I was talking about, right? And just maneuvering around enemies as well. Maxed out expertise because I'm more interested in using these skills than necessarily the mods. The mods I'm not having any problems charging them up, so I wasn't too concerned about it. I maxed out amplitude. Not really a make or break for this. However, it does help us with our heat wave. It does help us with our explosive shot. I don't know that it's necessarily enough to really choose this. You're probably better off taking those 10 points and putting them into something else that's going to fit you just a little bit better. Siphoner, I maxed that out as well because we got a bunch of burning effects and I'm kind of just enjoying lifesteal handling for that weapon spread and recoil. Fitness, evade distance. I'm finding that creating some distance between the enemies right now is working pretty well for me. So whenever I dodge, being able to make some space and then shoot them or hit them with whatever is working out nicely for me. And we are kind of squishy, so I like having that distance. And I can kind of completely counter some enemy like attacks. All right, we are currently in the Astropath's Respite. Now, a lot of, anytime I do some of these builds, a lot of times you fight trash guys, good gunplay's going to cover you up, right? 28, 29, 29, 29. Let's go into him. I didn't touch on my concoction. This is one I've been kind of swapping around. I have the Sanguine Vapor in there right now. It no longer increases the damage I take, so it's actually just a lifesteal increase, which is really solid for us. I do like that a lot. I'm going to go ahead and use a Resonating Heart now. And this is one of those situations, I'm going to lob one of those out. Boom, catch them on fire. Double stacks of 70, 72, 74. Look how it's increasing as we get closer. Now, earlier, when I was running around, some of these numbers, yeah, I was looking at more like 90-something damage over time from the Hellfire. Yeah, 97. There it is. But you see what I mean? Like, this thing is doing some wicked damage. You get in close, you can do like a second or two of burning them. And then you just let the damage over time effect do it from there. And it's kind of the same thing there, right? That double split is just from the shotgun itself. But then when we actually hit the weak spot, you're going to end up with 3 stacks of bleeding. And most of the time earlier, I'm looking at like 32 to 36 damage per second times 3. So you're looking at 100 damage or so every second. So one shot was typically enough to finish him off if I got those 3 stacks of burning. Now, if there's actually like a swarm of guys, what I would end up doing is, activate the Bullet Storm, and then we can like really like unload on enemies. I'm going to let that finish them off while we activate this. Boom. And then activate it now, and we just start unloading. Now, one of the things that got changed with the Sparkfire was its fire rate. I can kind of feel it here where it is definitely slower, especially, when we've got that actual like full auto capability, right? I can definitely tell that it's like not as fast as it was. I'm really kind of messing up some of those rolls. But we got 3 stacks now. Hit him with that. We can get a lot of stacks if we actually alternate our weapon correctly. And we got to reload, which is unfortunate. I could have totally used the heat wave there, but it's a little tricky on flying enemies. The like radius of it doesn't necessarily seem to go like vertically very high. So some of them it catches, but then other guys it doesn't. But I do find it works wonderfully on like elites and stuff because the fights actually take time, which means you can like actually like get some mileage out of it. And I do really enjoy that. All right, we got some enemies up here. So here's what we're gonna do. Get this popped, and then we're gonna activate the heat wave. And we're just gonna let that do work for us. Ready? That should be doing, see how it takes a bit, but that double stacks of damage. Like, look at that. 2 stacks of like 160 to 180 damage. It does a lot, dude. Like, it can really shred some guys once they just start like getting in close to you. I've really started liking it because like there can be guys close and you don't really realize it, and once they start cooking, what are they gonna do about it? Nothing. Like they're done. It's a ton of damage. I do really like it. Let's get. Oh, I already hit him. But if you do, look at that. 166 is the burning damage from Smolder. So if we can get another guy, there'll be an elite guy here. So maybe, I don't think I'll be able to hit him in the face, but, you know, we'll see. We can hit him with one of these. All right, activate you. I don't know that. Oh, that hit me. That's a bummer. Had an error recording right as I was fighting that guy. We won. So sorry, got to miss out on that. I think you guys will be okay though, right? But we can go down here and we'll fight the aberrant guy. And I think we'll get some big sweltering heat aura going on there. It's going to be pretty brutal. Hey, bud. All right, guess we're going elemental resist. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, so, yes, that's going to happen, and that's going to be a problem, right? You bump into enemies like that, they've got elemental resist, obviously going to make our build nowhere near as good. I mean, unfortunately for him, we're still doing a lot of damage, right? Like, definitely good. And if you can weave in melee attacks, it's going to lower that resistance, which means that we're doing even more damage. And now we've got 4 stacks of burning. We've got 6 stacks of burning. If we're really being good about alternating... Oopsies, that's a problem. Crap. That's where the amplitude comes in to be a problem. Blew myself up, which put me in the cube, finished me off. Should have won that fight. There was no reason I should have lost. But if you're being really good... You start swapping between your weapons, and then you end up with like 6 stacks of burning, which is a lot of burning, dude. Like, there's nothing they can do about it. They're going to lose until you blow yourself up, and then you end up sitting inside of a cube and, you know, died. So maybe you can lose. But of course, if you just put on heavier armor like you're able to, then this wouldn't be a problem. All right, round 2, starting off with a relic. Boom, hit him with an explosion. Swap this over to the sweltering heat. Let's get bullet storm going. Roll forward out of that. Roll forward again. Chop. Back up again. Boom, boom. Swap it. We'll try and be good about actually swapping our guns and stuff to get maximum stacks of burning. Yeah, just like that. I mean, look at him chip on down, dude. Owie. Yeah, I mean, you get on a single target like this, it's so much damage over time effects. Burning can do a lot. I really enjoy this. I like this setup quite a bit. I find fire builds very satisfying. Now, depending on what you've got going on, right? I have Heat Wave on. Hot Shot is another great choice because it can make your weapon do that fire damage that maybe you need. So you can run that. If you don't have like Spark Fire or Hellfire, which, I mean, really, to make the build work, you're going to need those guns because they just innately do the fire damage, and you need that for consistent DPS. You could still use Hot Shot for those, like, occasional bits of, like, extra fire damage and burning, but you're gonna want that, like, just standard fire damage, ultimately, at the end of the day. You could also run the Savior. I really like baseline Savior in this game. I know a lot of people aren't a super big fan of it, you know, at least compared to like its corrupted version or its original version from the previous game. But I do really enjoy it, and its baseline, it doesn't actually like catch things on fire, but you can use the mod, and that will go ahead and start lighting enemies on fire. It does a nice like chain spread effect that will catch enemies on fire, and I find it really satisfying. It is an option, not necessarily the most efficient because it's basically hot shot as well, and that you have to activate the mod and it only lasts for so long. All right, boss time. I swapped out my concoction. I've got the I've got root water on, just passive regeneration. It just felt like I needed just passive regenerate, like just health regen to really round up the setting, like the setup, because the lifesteal was nice, but I was already kind of doing lifesteal, and then when I wasn't shooting guys, I wasn't getting anything out of it, so it's kind of making me mad. So I just went with healing. Max HP would be a nice choice, or go Tranquility Font for the weapon spread, and then maybe you could go Concoction for weapon spread, and then change your ring to something else that's maybe more damage or something along those lines, and you know, use it like that. Let's see how this goes. Right, Concoction first, and dodge, hit him with, oh, charge attack, I missed, but we can do that with our Bullet Storm, and then dodge over those. Yeah, he's got the sweltering heat on him, or whatever it's called, because I don't actually remember. I kind of messed up. I thought I was going to hit him. I was hoping to hit him with a flamethrower anyways. Whee. Yeah, just keep unloading. There we go. Thick skin and vicious. So luckily it's not elemental resistance, right? I will say too, one bad thing was like doing kind of fire builds. You have to be cognizant of the enemy that you're fighting, because oh, I'm in trouble. There we go. Because like I went and I fought the Abomination, which ultimately actually was an okay fight for us in the end. But the thing is, like him or Kaula, specifically Kaula, they're in water, which means your fire effects aren't really going to be good because you're not getting the full burning. Look at how our aura is just automatically taking down these ghosts. Look at it go, man. Isn't that nice? I really like that. I really like this aura. 172 times 2, right? So like, that's really nice. And I haven't even pulled out Rampage. I've just used some Bullet Storm. Roll out of that, please. I do need to use my relic again. I need some more healing going on. This is a bad thing with using Resonating Heart, because it's not going to help us when we like really need to just heal. So that's a bad thing with it. Big reason I chose it, I mean, one, mechanically, getting the heal at the beginning to kind of go. I thought he was going to do another one. Getting the heal at the beginning with lots of big regen is nice, plus the damage buffs and everything like that. But in the flavor text, it talks about how it's got like a soothing heat to it. That noise is annoying. It's got a soothing heat to it, so I thought that was just kind of funny and fitting, right? But that's the build, man. I haven't used it on a big like world boss, but honestly, like considering how handily I beat that dude, short of having a boss with like elemental resistance on them, I feel pretty confident that we would be able to really take on like whoever we need to take on, right? I do want to go to Ward 13. Yeah, so give it a go. Just use some fire damage, man. Fire damage, really good. The Searing Wounds is also really nice in general. I think you could totally just kind of throw it on whatever you want. Like, it doesn't have to be a super heavy burning focus thing, because it, you know, sometimes I put Twisting Wounds on a gun just so I can get like bleeding on a dude, and then it's doing, you know, bleeding and reducing their healing, and I'm doing more range damage to them now. So this one, kind of the same thing. You just get some nice more raw damage and more damage on top of your damage. And so I kind of like that idea, and it's a nice way to get like a burning status effect if you're doing something along those lines. Yeah, thanks for checking it out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think and whatnot, you know, typical YouTuber ideas and stuff like that. But until the next one, take care.